Hey guys, tonight we're stepping softly into the flickering candlelight of an ancient chamber deep within a Maya temple. You're not in your bedroom anymore. You're kneeling on a coal stone floor, ink-stained fingers trembling slightly as you dip a brush into a pot of red liquid. It's not paint, it's blood, yours, because that's what it takes to write truth into the bones of the gods. You might think being a scribe was a peaceful, bookish life. But in the Maya world, writing wasn't just recording history. It was summoning spirits, predicting war, and sometimes hiding dangerous secrets. One miswritten glyph could offend a deity. One forgotten stroke might mean a life lost. And if you were chosen to become a royal scribe, congratulations, your reward is to never speak again. So before you get too cozy under the blankets, take a second to like this video and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy these strange midnight journeys into the forgotten corners of time. And hey, let me know in the comments, what time is it? Where you're listening from, I always love to see who's wide awake out there. Now dim the lights. Pull the covers up. Let the hum of your fan become the sound of jungle winds. You're not in control. You're in history. Let's begin. Section 1. The Ink-Stained Apprentice. You are 11 years old when they first take you to the scriptorium. You do not know what that word means yet, only that it smells like smoke ash and something metallic, almost like blood. The room is quiet, impossibly quiet, the kind of quiet that wraps around your bones and makes your heartbeat feel like shouting. There are no desks, no chairs, just long, low stone platforms smoothed by generations of elbows and forearms and covered in scrolls made from fig bark, brittle but sacred. Your master doesn't say hello. He only grunts and presses something into your hands, a long shard of bone, sharpened to a point. This is your first pen, he whispers. Do not lose it. It once belonged to a jaguar. You're not sure if he means literally, or if that's just part of the ceremony. Either way, you nod. Your training begins not with words, but with grinding. You spend hours, days, crouched beside other boys, your age scraping blackened pottery shards against flat stones, adding bits of soot, tree sap, and crushed insects into tiny clay pots. This is ink. And you learn quickly that it is not just a tool, but an offering. If the mixture is too thin, the gods will not listen. If it is too thick, they will be angry. One boy mixes it wrong, and the master smears it across his forehead in shame. Later, you are taught how to sit. Not how to write, not yet, but how to sit in the proper posture with your legs folded just so, and your spine straight as a spear. Scribes must endure silence, stillness, and time. Lots of time. Writing is not for the impatient. The only sounds allowed are the soft brushing of reed pens, the occasional hiss of a candle, and the scraping of stone on bark. You sleep in the same room. Or, rather, you doze when allowed. You lie on woven mats, thin and scratchy, while the air around you stays heavy with incense and damp jungle rot. At night, the older boys whisper stories about the things scribes are sometimes made to write confessions, execution orders, even curses. You pretend not to hear. You just want to learn the glyphs. Ah, the glyphs. They are the language of gods, animals, planets, and people all mixed into one. There are hundreds. Some are words, some are sounds, some are entire sentences in one swirling symbol. You spend a week just drawing the symbol for rain, a curled thing that looks like a snake holding tears. If your line wobbles, you must start over. The paper is precious. Mistakes are punished with silence, or worse, cleaning out the chamber pots of the temple guards. Once, you are allowed to trace a real codex, an old one, faded but still breathing history. You feel a chill when your hand glides over the dried ink. Some of it, you're told, was written with blood, not metaphorically, but truly, mixed with cinnabar and sap. When you ask whose blood, your teacher shrugs and says it's not your job to ask that. Over time, your fingers change. The calluses build. You learn to hold your brush, not like a spear, but like a whisper. You discover that the best ink is made from wasp nests. You learn that certain glyphs are only to be drawn during certain moon phases. And when the wind howls from the mountains, the senior scribes chant under their breath while they work, because some words, if written at the wrong time, can summon storms. Then, after what feels like years, you are given your first assignment. Copy a short list of royal ancestors onto a small tablet. It's a test, not of your memory, but of your reverence. The names must be perfect. The spacing must be flawless. If a line breaks where it shouldn't, it could be seen as an insult to a long-dead king, and dead kings, in Maya belief, are not known for being forgiving. When you finish, your master looks at your work for a long time. His eyes narrow. You expect to be corrected, but instead he nods once, then places a single feather on your mat that night. Now he says, you are no longer a boy. You are a scribe in training. You do not smile. You do not cry. You simply bow your head, because you know that from now on everything you write is sacred. Every mistake you make could echo for centuries. And somewhere, deep down, you also know the ink on your fingers will never fully wash away. Section 2. A city of codices and carvings. You wake before dawn. The city is still not silent, but breathing. Somewhere beyond the clay walls of your quarters, a howler monkey lets out a low, bone-shaking call. The sound is so ancient, it feels like the earth itself is clearing its throat. You sit up slowly, still aching from last night's hours, hunched over bark paper. Your hands are stained with ink and resin, your fingers stiff. But there is no time for stretching. Today you are permitted to walk the sacred path into the heart of the city. Yaxchilan, they call it. A city not built for comfort, but for memory. Its stones hold centuries of voices, kings, queens, warriors, and scribes, all speaking in carved glyphs that line every lintel, stela, and staircase. The walls don't need guards. They are guarded by stories. As you walk through the misty plazas, you realize this city is a library, but not one of shelves and scrolls. No, here the knowledge is baked into limestone and jade. Every corner holds a narrative, a sacrifice, a dream. Your teacher walks beside you, silent as always, until he stops in front of Temple 33, the temple of carved ancestors. He points upward, and there you see it, a lintel high above the entrance depicting a woman, a queen, pulling a thorned rope through her tongue, blood dripping into a bowl below. It's not grotesque, it's ceremonial, sacred. This, your teacher finally says, was written without words. But you one day will write what cannot be carved. You're taken deeper into the city, past temples and bathhouses, past the ball court where players wear rubber belts and duckstone balls hurled like lightning, past the marketplace where chilly smoke stings your eyes. Finally you arrive at a long hall, its doorway shaded by heavy, woven mats. Inside it is dark, but not completely. The walls reflect soft flickers of fire. This is the codex room, not open to the public, not even to most priests. The codices are not kept on shelves. They are stored in clay vessels wrapped in cloth, tucked in wall niches like offerings. Each book is a lifetime, maybe more. Made from amate bark coated in lime to make a smooth white surface, folded accordion style into long, elegant panels. Some are covered in glyphs and bright reds, blues, blacks. Others are nearly blank, waiting for a scribe to hear the right story at the right time from the right god. You're not allowed to touch anything yet. Just observe. There's a scribe at work, an elder. His hands do not shake, though his hair is nearly gone. He sits cross-legged, brush in one hand, a small bowl of black ink on a tripod burner beside him. No one speaks. You watch as he draws a glyph you recognize, Kahul Divine, followed by another, Ajah Lord. He's writing the title of a god king, but he hesitates for a breath before adding the name. Your teacher later explains the king had died 2 weeks ago, and the elders weren't sure yet if his name should be written as a man or remembered as a deity. You learn that writing is not merely about ink and grammar. It is about timing. It is about politics. It is about mood. Every codex, your teacher tells you, is a spell. Some are meant to last forever. Others are made only to be read once, then buried. There are secret books, forbidden books, books no one dares read aloud, ones that record omens, eclipses, betrayals. You ask where those are kept, and your teacher only says, somewhere where even the gods must knock. Outside again, you notice something you missed before. Every stone carving has a rhythm not just of design, but of meaning. The glyphs curve in waves. One line honors a god. The next hints at famine. The third blames a rival city. And somehow this subtlety, this quiet kind of warfare, all exists inside the stone. You suddenly feel the weight of what you're learning. You're not just a writer. You are becoming a keeper of echoes, a sculptor of memory. That night, back in your scriptorium, you try sketching a new glyph on a scrap of bark paper. It means seeing clearly. But your line is crooked. You try again. Still not right. The third time you get it. It looks like an eye shaped like a bird in flight. You smile just a little. The city sleeps outside. But within these walls, the words never stop whispering. Section 3. Learning to write in glyphs. You are now 13, maybe 14. No one keeps exact track. Time is measured in moons, in harvests in the shadow of Venus against the morning sky. But what matters more than age is progress. And your progress is slow. Glyphs do not come easily. They're not letters, not symbols, not pictures. They are all of those at once and more. Your mornings begin with copying. Over and over again, you trace the same glyphs onto bark paper with carbon ink until your fingers cramp. Chalk for youth, Kakin for sun, Kawil the god of lightning and royal lineage. There are hundreds. Some scholars say there are over 800 in total, though none agree exactly. Glyphs change, depending on where and when and why they are written. The same symbol might mean power in one context, but suffering in another. Glyphs are not words. They are stories with bones. Your teacher says, if you can write the word for corn, you must also know how it tastes, how it grows, how it dies in drought. He makes you plant corn behind the scriptorium. You tend it for weeks, watch the stalks grow, and when the time comes, burn them under the full moon. Only then does he let you write Ix Sim corn for the first time. You quickly learn this is how scribes are made, not by memorizing, but by becoming. You do not just write about the world. You must live it. Writing practice is often done by candlelight to teach you how to steady your brush, even in low flickering shadows. Your brush is made from agave fibers. The best ones are trimmed from the same plant used in ritual piercings. There is power in the ink, but there is more in the tool. One boy tries to carve a stylus from a fishbone. It snaps mid-stroke, and the ink spills across a nearly complete page. The teacher does not shout. He simply gathers the scroll and tosses it into the fire. Nothing is sacred, he mutters, if it is rushed. Some glyphs are deceptively simple, a single swirl that might mean sky or breath. Others are maddening. You spend 3 weeks on a phrase that means the death of a noble warrior during an eclipse, which in glyph form becomes something like a deer, pierced by black stars, wrapped in fire. You begin to dream in glyphs. Once, you wake up whispering Ba'ak bones, with no idea why. There is a ceremony for completing your first full sentence. It's small quiet, no drums, no incense, just your teacher, a clay bowl of water, and your codex draft. You kneel. He dips the scroll in the water, and the ink begins to dissolve. Words are water, he says. They flow, they fade, but once written, they feed the roots of time. You learn that not all glyphs are written equally. The day glyph must always be clear. The death glyph must never be too bold to avoid inviting the real thing. When writing names of gods, you must whisper them silently in your head, with every stroke. You ask what happens if you forget. Your teacher replies, ask the scribe, who did, oh wait, you can't. He's gone. Some afternoons, you're taken to read the carvings on temple staircases. Not for worship, for training. The steps at Temple 26 are so steep you nearly fall twice. But your teacher insists every king who climbed these stairs read the same names. If you wish to write for kings, you must feel what they felt. At the top, you read the story of a king who built the temple with help from a god disguised as a serpent. You ask if it's real. The teacher only shrugs. It is written. So now it is. This moment changes something in you. You realize that scribes do not just reflect the world, they shape it. If you carve a lie well enough, it becomes remembered. If you record a fear, it becomes shared. If you omit a truth, it disappears. Suddenly, writing feels less like art and more like power, and power is dangerous. That night, you practice alone. You write your own name in glyphs for the first time, not just phonetically, but metaphorically, combining symbols for the moon, ink, and silence. It's not perfect, but it feels true. You burn it before anyone sees. Section 4. Tools of a Maya Scribe. The tools arrive one by one, like gifts from forgotten gods. Each is presented without ceremony, without applause, only a single word use. That's how you receive your inkpot, your reed brush, your smooth bark paper, folded like an accordion. These are not possessions, they are responsibilities. Your inkpot is made of clay, low-fired and uneven with a chipped lip that cuts your finger more than once. But you don't complain. You've seen worse. Some scribes use seashells, others use small gourds. A few keep multiple pots tied around their waists like a belt of poisons. The inks inside are like alchemy, each one serving a different spirit. Black is made from soot and crushed obsidian dust. It is the base ink, the ink of record, the color of time. Red is trickier. It requires hematite or sometimes cinnabar, though the latter is dangerous to breathe. Some use dried blood animal or otherwise. You never ask which. Blue is a miracle, a mix of indigo dye and palygorskite clay. The recipe is ancient and nearly impossible to replicate. It binds to the page like a second skin and resists fading for centuries. Only high priests and elite scribes are allowed to use it. You've seen it once. It shimmered like a river under moonlight. Paper, too, is sacred. It comes from the inner bark of the amate tree, soaked, pounded, scraped smooth, and coated with a thin layer of lime plaster. It smells faintly sour. When you hold it, it crinkles like something alive. You are told never to fold it the wrong way. It remembers. Then there are the brushes. Most are made from fine agave fibers, tied tightly around a splinter of wood. The finest ones are cut from the hair of wild animals, ocelots, monkeys, even hummingbirds. One scribe you meet swears by his brush, made from human baby hair. No one asks where he got it. He writes with terrifying precision. You learn that the brush is not dragged. It's kissed to the page, then lifted. Kissed, then lifted. Writing is not a push. It's a dance. There are rulers, too, made from fishbone or thin wood, used to keep glyphs in their sacred proportions. A glyph that is too tall is considered arrogant, too wide, and it looks lazy. There are dividers made of string, tensioned between your thumbs, to plan the spacing of sentences. Your teacher says a scribe without a ruler is a singer without breath. Some scribes carve into stone instead of paper. They use obsidian chisels and copper tools. These men are revered, but many go blind or lose their fingers. One master shows you his calloused palm, where a stone once slipped and nearly sliced his lifeline. I gave my blood to the gods, he says, and they haven't given it back. Storage is its own ritual. You wrap scrolls in cloth, soaked with cedar oil, to repel insects. You stack them in niches lined with volcanic ash to absorb moisture. If a codex is to be buried, and many are, you paint its cover with limewash and bind it in sacred twine. The dead must sleep with stories, your teacher murmurs. You learn to prepare your own pigments. You chew tree bark for tannins, boil beetles. For red, collect ash from ritual fires. Sometimes when your ink thickens too much, you spit into it to thin it. Other times, a drop of blood does the trick. No one says anything when you do this. It's part of the craft. Every tool has a rule. Every rule has a reason. But no one writes them down. You memorize them like prayers. You repeat them under your breath as you work. Never mix red and black on the same page unless speaking of death. Never start a codex on a waning moon. Always clean your brush with rainwater, never with well water. Always write facing east. Why east? Because that's where the gods rise. Your favorite tool in the end is not the brush or the pot, but the sharp obsidian blade you use to trim your reeds. It's small, triangular, and sharper than any knife you've ever touched. You've cut yourself at least a dozen times on it, sometimes by accident, sometimes not. When you bleed, you let it fall onto the test page. Just a drop, just enough. Some say the best ink is mixed with intention. You believe it's mixed with sacrifice. Section 5. Scribes and the Sacred Calendar. You are finally allowed to touch the calendar. Not the stone one, not the great circular wheels carved into the temple walls, which the high priests spin with ceremony and incense, but the real one, the living one, a codex of time itself. The calendar is a folded book longer than your arm span, its pages worn smooth by generations of scribe hands. Each panel holds rows of glyphs that seem to breathe jaguar-footed days, serpent-headed nights, Venus cycles, eclipses wrapped in smoke. There are numbers too, but not like yours. The Maya write time with dots and bars. A dot is 1, a bar is 5. 0 is a shell soft, and round a sacred nothingness. You learn the calendar is not one, but many. The first is Solican, 260 days long. It's the sacred cycle used for rituals, naming children, choosing kings, scheduling sacrifices. It's older than the pyramids. Each day has a name and a number, and no two combinations repeat for 9 months. Today might be 4 Kyan, tomorrow 5 Chikshan. Every number and every name carries its own mood, its own rules. Then there is the Hab. It's more familiar. A solar year, 365 days, 18 months of 20 days, each plus 5 nameless days, Wayeb. You are warned never to write during Wayeb. The world becomes thin then. The gods see too much. Finally, there is the long count, the calendar of eternity. It tracks time in massive units, baktuns, katuns, tuns, oenals kins. You copy one date from a royal monument 9, 12.2.0.16. It marks the coronation of a king, or maybe the end of a war. You're not sure, but when you whisper the numbers out loud, they feel heavy, as if reciting them ages you slightly. The scribes keep giant charts to match the calendars together. When Zolkikin and Hab align in a certain way, a portal opens metaphorically usually. It's the moment when a god might walk through a man, or when a city burns. One scribe claims he predicted a drought just by watching the Venus cycle skip a beat. He hasn't been wrong since. You learn that scribes are the only ones trusted to track the sky. Priests perform the rituals, yes. Kings give the orders, but it's you who tells them when. When to bury the heart of a prisoner, when to plant maize, when to avoid travel because Mars is angry. A scribe with a steady hand can delay war. A nervous one might start it. The calendar tells you more than just time. It tells you personality. You were born on 8 Kaan, which means you are clever, careful, and blessed with good ink. Your friend was born on 13 Kawak, which means he talks too much and might be struck by lightning. You try not to stand too close to him in storms. You ask your teacher once, who invented all this, who decided the days and the names. He looks at you for a long time before replying, someone who listened more than they spoke. There is reverence in the way you begin to write dates now. Each stroke is slow, deliberate. Writing a date is like planting a seed. It may grow into something beautiful or poisonous. Eventually, you are assigned to transcribe a full Solkin round, 260 glyphs in order with corresponding images. It takes you a full month, maybe more. You illustrate Ik as a wind-blown tree, Keat as a net tangled in fish bones, Ajah, the day of the Lords, as a radiant figure wrapped in gold. You finish exhausted, but proud. Your teacher reviews it in silence, then places it in the vault of approved codices. You do not see it again. But one morning as you pass the temple steps, you spot a priest reciting from your codex. He raises it above his head. The people bow. You do not say a word, but your heart beats a little faster. Your glyphs now, prayers. That night, under a moon as round as the shell glyph for 0, you begin a new page. You write tomorrow's date. Not for a ritual, not for a king, just for yourself. because now you understand to write time is to bend it. Section 6. A life of ritual and silence. There comes a day you don't know when it began when you realize you've stopped speaking. Not because you've taken any vow, not because the temple forbids it, but because silence has crept into you like smoke and made a home in your lungs. Days pass where your only conversation is the soft brush of ink on bark. When others speak, their voices feel loud, jagged, too sharp for the room. You now live in the room of memory and glyphs. Silence is the first rule they never wrote down. A scribe must hear more than he says, and not just hear the world, but hear between it. Hear the whispers in candlelight, the sigh of a priest adjusting his robe, the scratch of a rat somewhere behind the plaster, even the hiss of the ink cooling after a flame passes too close. Your life has become ritual. You wake at the same hour, long before the sun. You clean your brush. You chant the name of the ink color you'll use first. Kyagan red, ik black, sack white. Then you chew resin to clear your breath. Then you light a twist of cedar bark and let the smoke curl around the edge of your writing mat. Only then do you begin. If someone watched you, they might think you're performing magic, and in a way you are. Some rituals are quiet, others not so much. On the new moon, all scribes in training must descend to the subterranean chamber beneath the temple. There, by torchlight, and surrounded by effigies of jaguar gods and death lords, you copy a single glyph onto a slab of limestone, the same one every time, Zak, meaning completion. You don't ask why. You just write it, kneeling on cold stone, your breath misting in the humid dark. There's a boy who speaks too much, always asking questions. One day, he interrupts a master mid-writing. The next morning, he's reassigned not to the codex room, but to firewood duty. You don't see him again. The lesson is clear. There's power in saying nothing. You begin to think in ritual. Before each writing session, you draw a small circle of dots on the floor, 4 corners and a center. It's not required, but you feel wrong if you don't. You trace it with your fingertip, then place your ink pots inside it like offerings. Left to right, black, red, green, yellow. East, west, north, south. During the solstice, you fast. Not because anyone makes you, but because the glyphs feel too heavy otherwise. You've seen what happens when someone writes while impure. Once a senior scribe spilled ink shaped like a screaming face. He burned the whole scroll without reading it. You don't ask why. Even your emotions become part of the ritual. You never write angry, never write in grief. You wait, you cleanse, you wait some more. The words must come from still water, not a storm. And then there's the gaze. You're told never to meet the eyes of a reader while they're holding your text. To do so invites their spirit into your own. You've seen it happen. A priest holding a codex suddenly bursting into tears, whispering, "Who wrote this sorrow?" No one answers. Your daily world shrinks, from city to scriptorium, from temple to table, from gods to glyphs. But within that shrinking, something else expands, the space inside you. In silence, you hear echoes of things you never noticed before. The pattern of raindrops on palm leaves, the hum of insects matching the beat of your heart. The moment just before the candle flickers out. You no longer speak your dreams, but you write them, sometimes hidden between calendar dates and marginalia. A face that doesn't exist, a temple with no doors, a line of text that reads itself. You startle one day when someone touches your shoulder and speaks your name. It takes you a moment to remember your voice. When you reply, it sounds like someone else is speaking. The final test comes not in words, but in silence itself. You are asked to write a record of a royal funeral, but you are not given any names, no details, no cause of death, just the instruction, write what must be remembered. You spend the whole night in quiet. Then at dawn you write a single page. One long spiraling line of glyphs that speaks not of facts, but of grief, of legacy, of what it means to vanish. When the priest reads it, he nods. No corrections, no praise, just a single word, enough. You bow. Because a scribe doesn't need applause, only clarity. Section 7. The Forbidden Codex Room. You never meant to go there. The forbidden room was always spoken of like a legend, part threat, part temptation. Every scribe hears of it early. A chamber buried beneath the temple complex deeper than the storage vaults, deeper even than the death chasm used for sacrificial bones. No one says exactly what's in it, only that it holds codices too dangerous to read, texts written in blood and grief, words that make your mouth dry just thinking about them. So when a priest in gold-trimmed robes finds you one evening and says, "Bring your brush," you've been summoned, you don't ask where. You follow. He leads you behind the main altar, past a narrow stairwell that curves like a serpent into the earth. The air grows cooler, then wet. You smell mold ink and something like burnt feathers. The walls are carved, but not with gods or kings. Just lines, intersecting, endless, like a map with no destination. At the bottom, a stone door waits. The priest doesn't touch it. He taps it twice with his staff. Slowly, it slides aside. Inside is a room not much bigger than your sleeping mat. The ceiling is low, the walls are bone-colored. The light comes from a single clay dish filled with whale oil and a floating wick. In the center of the floor sits a black stone box. You are not alone. A woman is already kneeling beside it, head bowed, her hands resting on her knees. Her face is painted with ash. Her eyelids are inked shut. When she speaks, her voice sounds like pages turning. You are here because you can write without asking questions. You swallow hard, say nothing. She opens the box. Inside is a codex unlike any you've seen. The cover is thick and dark, stitched with jaguar sinew. It doesn't unfold like the others. It unrolls a long vertical scroll, stained and frayed at the edges. The ink is brown, the color of old wounds. Your task is simple copy, 2 pages. That's it. You sit knees cracking and lay your bark paper flat. You dip your brush. The ink runs a little too thin. You add a drop of oil, not water, never water. You begin. The glyphs are strange, familiar but distorted. They twist into each other. Some double back like they're trying to escape the page. One glyph seems to move when you blink. You try not to blink again. Halfway through, you realize you're sweating. Though the air is cold, your skin is hot. Your breath grows shallow. But you keep writing. You don't read the text. You're told not to. You focus only on lines spacing angles. But one phrase repeats a series of jagged shapes that translate roughly to the mouth of the sun is not closed. You don't know what it means. When you finish, the woman takes your scroll. She doesn't check it. She burns it. You passed, she says. You want to ask, what was the test? But your tongue feels heavy. You just nod. On the way back up, the priest says nothing. The stairs feel longer than before. When you reach the surface, the sunlight blinds you. It's midday, but it feels like you've returned from another lifetime. That night, you dream of stone mouths and silent screams. You wake with ink on your hands, though you don't remember writing. You never speak of the room again. But from that day forward, when the senior scribes look at you, there's a flicker of something different. Respect or fear, or perhaps recognition. You are no longer just a student. You are a vessel. And some vessels are never emptied. Section 8. Stars, blood, and Venus. You begin to rise before even the priests, long before the sun, before the roosters, before the first insect chirps. You climb to the roof of the eastern tower, the one reserved for stargazers, with your ink-stained robe flapping in the cold morning breeze. The stars haven't faded yet, and Venus, brilliant, vengeful Venus, hangs low on the horizon like a dagger made of fire. This is not idle astronomy. You are not here to marvel. You are here to count. Venus is not a star. The scribes know this. Venus is a force, a signal, a god. Her appearance marks war, famine, rebellion, or rebirth, depending on the day, the angle, and the one who reads her light. The Maya track her with brutal precision. They know she disappears behind the sun for 8 days, then reappears in the morning sky. This cycle repeats every 584 days. Your task is to record her moments of rising and vanishing down to the heartbeat. You sit in the cold, noting the angle, the time, the color of the sky as she emerges. Red sky, bad omen. Blue sky, uncertain. You scratch quick glyphs onto your wax tablet. Later, you'll transcribe them in full. Below you, the city sleeps. Or perhaps not. In the inner courtyard, a priest sharpens a flint blade preparing for the morning's bloodletting. You know what's coming. A prisoner will be brought. Their chest will be cut. The heart, if it still beats, lifted toward Venus. Why? Because Venus demands it. You've written the rituals yourself. When Venus rises on 9, Ka'an, blood is to be offered before sunrise. If she appears again during a full moon, then only noble blood will do. There are exceptions. There are entire codices detailing the rules. You have copied many of them. And yet, no one ever asks why. Not really. It's just the way things are. Venus burns, someone bleeds, the world continues. Sometimes you wonder if Venus was always a god of war, or if she became one only because the scribes kept writing it so. There's a scribe who disagrees, an older man with cloudy eyes, who once told you Venus doesn't demand anything. We do, and we blame the sky. A week later, he was sent away. No one says where. You keep watching. Later, back in the scriptorium, you begin the codex of the current Venus cycle. Each phase is illustrated. You draw Venus with a serpent crown, with fire eyes, with twin jaguar cubs at her feet. She is beautiful and terrible, the queen of omens. You are careful with the dates. One misplaced glyph, and the next sacrifice could be early or late. Either way, someone dies. Your brush shakes more than usual. You tell yourself, it's the chill. You recall a time last year when Venus rose unexpectedly 3 days early. The temple panicked. A war party was dispatched to a nearby village without warning. You wrote the announcement scroll. It said the gods had spoken. In truth, you weren't even sure your calculation was wrong. But the village burned anyway. Some nights, when you cannot sleep, you sketch Venus on the inside of your bark paper wrapper. Not as a god, but as a woman, smiling, alone, looking tired. You don't show anyone. One morning, after months of perfect tracking, your master gives you a new assignment. Prepare the war eclipse page, he says. Venus will rise blood red next month. You already knew. You've seen it in the stars. You've seen it in the ink. You've seen it in your dreams. A battlefield under a red dawn, bodies aligned like constellations. You begin to write. Section 9. Secrets under the temple floor. There is a story passed quietly from one scribe to the next, never written, never spoken aloud where priests might hear it. It says that the most important codices were never meant to be read, not by the kings, not by the priests, not even by other scribes. They were buried. Not lost, not destroyed, hidden like bones beneath the skin of the earth, buried beneath temple floors inside sealed clay urns, or wrapped in layers of bark and cloth, tucked away with bits of jade and obsidian teeth. And only those who wrote them knew where. One evening, you are summoned not to write, but to dig. The message arrives on a folded strip of palm bark. No name, just a glyph, tsa'ai, dog. You know the code. It means follow without being followed. You wait until nightfall, then slip from the scriptorium through the southern corridor. You wear no shoes. The stone is cool beneath your feet. Your brush and blade are hidden beneath your robe. At the temple's base, a scribe waits, older than most, with a sunken face and eyes like candle stubs. He gestures wordlessly and leads you behind a curtain of vines to a low tunnel beneath the main staircase. There, in total darkness, he presses a sharpened deer rib into your hand and points to the dirt. You begin to dig. The soil is dry and packed. Each scrape of the bone tool sends echoes down the tunnel. After an hour, your fingers blister. After 2, the stone scrapes change. You've hit something. The elder helps you clear it. A small vault, not stone, but hardened clay. Sealed with lime, marked with a glyph you've never seen before. It looks like a face, but it has too many eyes. He breaks the seal. Inside is a scroll folded and wrapped in black cloth. No ornament, no title, just the faint scent of burnt pine. You are not allowed to open it, only to carry it. You follow him in silence through a maze of passages until you reach a floor tile beneath the temple altar. It looks like every other tile, but he lifts it with a hook of bone revealing a cavity lined in obsidian flakes. The codex is placed inside, then a second scroll. This one yours is added, the one you copied last week on the death omens of twins. You didn't know it would be buried. You feel honored or maybe uneasy. The old scribe speaks finally. Some things are written for now. Others are written for when the world ends. You help reseal the floor. You leave with bleeding hands and dust in your teeth. From that night on, you see the temple differently. You walk its floors knowing there are stories beneath every step. Truths kept quiet, not by censors but by time. You begin to wonder how many scrolls lie hidden beneath your feet, and who decided which ones should sleep. One morning, while sweeping the alcove of a minor shrine, your brush knocks loose a loose tile. You hesitate. Beneath it is only dirt. But you scrape just to be sure. Your blade hits wood. A box. Small, half-rotted, empty, except for one strip of bark paper. It's not in Maya script. It's older. A swirl of glyphs you can't read, and one image, a hand reaching down, or up. You hide it in your robe. Later in your room, you study it under candlelight. The ink is still faintly wet. How? You don't sleep that night. But the next morning you return the fragment to the hole. You press the tile down. You sweep until no trace remains. Some secrets are not yours to carry, but still the glyph burns in your memory. And every time you kneel to write, you wonder if you're adding to the truth or burying it deeper. Section 10. When ink becomes prophecy. It begins with a dream. You're standing alone on a stone platform under a moonless sky. The trees below rustle not from wind, but from whispers. In your hand is a brush, but no ink. On the page in front of you, words appear without you writing them. A glyph you've never drawn. A sentence you don't understand. You wake with the shape burned into your mind, 3 swirling strokes, like wind caught in a knot. You try to forget it, but the same dream returns the next night, and again. Eventually you draw it, just once, just to get it out. You press the lines gently into a spare piece of bark paper. It feels wrong, like opening a sealed tomb. You hide it in the folds of your mat. A week later, the sky changes. No one else notices at first, but you do. The sun sets a little slower. The wind carries a sour smell. The insects go silent during hours they should sing. Then the elders begin to murmur. A comet appears in the eastern sky, a crooked tail trailing ash. The priests panic. You are summoned to copy the omens again, the ones tied to celestial signs. Find the glyph for fire serpent, they say. Find the one for royal illness. You remember your hidden paper. You take it out. The glyph you drew it matches one in an ancient codex, a forbidden one, the meaning unweaving. You're told to copy it onto the royal wall calendar. You hesitate. Are you sure, you ask? The senior scribe doesn't look at you. We've checked. It fits the date. It must be done. You write it. The ink bleeds more than usual, as if the paper is resisting. 2 days later, the king falls ill. Not from poison, not from wound, just emptiness. He stops speaking, stops eating. He simply stares at the horizon as if watching something only he can see. The priests perform rites. The scribes prepare funeral formulas, just in case. You are not told to stop writing. You are told to keep going. Add the glyph to more scrolls. Paint it on the offering tables. Engrave it on a shell to be buried in a ceremony. You become the carrier of a symbol no one dares say aloud. Whispers follow you. One night, another scribe asks you, did you invent that glyph? You say no, but part of you wonders, what if you had? What if it only became real when you wrote it? The sickness spreads not just among the nobles. A merchant collapses mid-transaction. A guard forgets his name. A child won't stop screaming glyphs that don't exist. You try not to draw anymore, But one morning your hand moves before your thoughts. On a fresh page meant for a lunar table, you find yourself sketching a bird. No, a burning bird, wings twisted backward. Its beak is open, inside a snake, swallowing the stars. You burn the page. Too late. The next day, a fire sweeps through the scriptorium. No one dies, but dozens of scrolls are lost, and one wall blackens with soot, revealing an older inscription beneath it, faint, nearly erased, your glyph. You are summoned again, but this time not to write, to explain. You are led to the oracle chamber where the high priest sits, with blindfolded eyes and hands inked black. He asks only one question: what else have you seen? You don't answer, because the truth is, you don't know if you're seeing the future or creating it. They send you back to your room. You expect exile, or worse. But instead, a new scroll arrives. A clean page. At the top, a title, Vision Records. Your job is to write, not to judge. The temple will decide what to believe. So you begin again. This time slower. You write the glyph with care. Add a line beneath it, another. Soon it becomes a story. The story of a king who dreamed too clearly, of a city that followed words more than wisdom. You pause. And you write one more line. This may never happen, but if it does, we cannot say we were not warned. Section 11. War Records and Political Lies. You're called to the royal chamber during the hottest part of the day, when the sun presses down like a heavy hand and even the lizards stop moving. You arrive sweating, your robe sticking to your back, your fingers already ink-stained. The guards don't speak. They just gesture toward the doorway curtly, then step aside. Inside, the king sits, slouched on his jade-inlaid throne, flanked by two silent nobles and a scribe you've only seen once before, a tall, grim man with eyes like obsidian and a mouth that never quite closes. On the table before them are several scrolls. Some you recognize. You wrote them. Sit, the grim scribe says. You sit. We're revising the Battle of the Black Tree, he says. You blink, but the battle didn't happen yet. Exactly, he replies without irony. It takes you a moment to understand. This isn't a transcription job. It's fiction. Carefully constructed, politically necessary fiction. The king is planning a campaign, not just with warriors, but with words. If the scribes write it as victory before it begins, then the people will believe it's already won. Morale will rise. Tribute will flow. Allies will be shamed into loyalty. Write that 3 enemy cities fell within the same moon, the senior scribe says. List their rulers. Say they begged for mercy. But we haven't. You start, then stop. The king raises an eyebrow. We will, he says, because the glyphs will make it so. You understand. This isn't a request. You begin to write. You describe battles that haven't happened with dramatic details. Blood on the obsidian spears, through gold-plated armor, prisoners weeping for forgiveness. You paint the king as radiant, decisive, nearly divine. The temples burn in the distance. The enemy banners fall at his feet. You draw glyphs for events that only exist on your page. Victory, surrender, divine approval. Your brush moves smoothly, too smoothly. When the scroll is finished, the king himself reads it aloud. His voice is slow, regal, certain. When he finishes, he looks at you and says, now when we march, it won't be for conquest. It will be for confirmation. He smiles. You don't. You return to the scriptorium and soak your brush for hours. It still feels heavy. That week, the army departs. The priests bless the weapons using your scroll. The warriors chant your invented lines. Children recite the names of cities that haven't yet fallen. The people believe. But you are left behind. Not to rest, to edit. Your next task is rewriting older records. The king's father, once described as cautious, now becomes a wise strategist. His failures become divinely inspired delays. His illness becomes celestial communion. The scribes adjust the glyphs carefully. shifting a curve here, adding a line there. Suddenly, a war loss becomes a holy dream. A poor harvest becomes a planned sacrifice. A younger scribe asks you if this is wrong. You say it's history. He doesn't ask again. Weeks later, news arrives. The army returns victorious, mostly. One of the 3 cities resisted, but your scroll said they fell, so the army burns it anyway to match the story. That night, a captured noble is paraded through the streets. He is gagged and bound, his royal glyph shaved off his forehead, a humiliation worse than death. You recognize him. He once hosted your delegation during a festival of maize. He gave you mango and laughed at your awful singing. Now he's silent. You are ordered to write a scroll announcing his surrender. You hesitate. Someone notices. Would you like to join him, they ask. You write. You draw his glyph, the one that was erased from his body. You make it perfect. Then you cross it out with a thick black X. The people cheer when the scroll is read aloud. They believe. They always believe. That night, you return to the Codex vault and add a new page to your private scroll, the one no one reads, the one you hide behind the water jars. You write the truth. No embellishment, no praise, just dates, names, real events. You title the page, The Record That Wasn't. Then you roll it up and bury it under your mat, because sometimes the only honest history is the one no one ever sees. Section 12. Punishment for a misspelling. There are mistakes in writing, and then there are offenses, and among the Maya scribes, the line between the two is thinner than a reed tip. You remember the moment too clearly. His name was Yakiawil, a quiet scribe a few years older than you, known for his meticulous hand and his absolute silence. He once copied an entire lunar table without a single correction. You'd watched him dip his brush with reverence, as if every stroke were an offering. But even the best hands can slip. It was a Tuesday, a humid one, the kind of day where the ink dries too quickly and the paper curls from the air. Ya was transcribing a ritual calendar for a royal wedding. The glyphs were ceremonial blessings, prosperity, protection from illness. But he made one error, a single line. Instead of writing Itzamna, the revered creator god, he wrote Itzamkan, a minor demon name, meaning twisted fire breath. It was a small flick of the brush, a curve instead of a dot. Harmless perhaps, but not to the priests. The scroll was already delivered when they found it. The priest who read it froze mid-sentence. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The wedding was delayed. The scroll was brought back to the scriptorium trembling in the hands of a guard. You remember the stain of sweat on the bark paper. You remember the silence as everyone stared at the single, incorrect glyph. Ya didn't defend himself. He didn't speak. Your teacher was the one who delivered the sentence. Tongue, he said. At first you thought he meant the scroll would be burned, its tongue silenced. But you were wrong. 2 days later, Ya was brought to the temple steps. The scribes were made to watch, not as punishment, as instruction. The ritual was simple. The high priest painted Ya's face with black ink. Then, using a blade of obsidian, he sliced a thin line across Ya's tongue. Not deep, not enough to kill, but enough to ruin speech. The crowd cheered. You flinched. Ya never returned to the scriptorium. Some say he was sent to the outer farms to oversee bean harvest records. Others say he wandered into the jungle and became a ghost, whispering stories to the birds. But his mistake lingered. After that, every scribe became more careful. You began checking your glyphs 3 times, then 4. You whispered every deity's name under your breath as you wrote it. You burned a pinch of copal resin before writing anything for the palace. Fear sharpens memory. You noticed others doing strange rituals too. One boy only wrote with his left hand during moonlit nights. Another refused to use black ink on Tuesdays. One girl slept with her brush under her pillow, claiming it told her what not to write in dreams. None of this was taught, but all of it was learned. One day you asked your teacher, "Has anyone ever made a mistake so small it was invisible?" He stared at you a moment, then answered, "Yes, and we're probably still paying for it." After Yah's punishment, the scribes began to keep backup scrolls hidden drafts just in case a glyph turned wrong in the final version. You joined them. Every time you completed a public scroll, you made a private one, sometimes identical, sometimes not. Because the truth is, sometimes you know the official version is wrong, but correcting it would be worse than the mistake. So you let it pass. But you write the truth elsewhere, quietly, with no signature, hidden in layers of marginalia, folded inside other glyphs, buried in footnotes. Because that's what Yah taught you, not with words, but with silence. Section 13. Scribes and Prisoners of War. The prisoners arrived just before dawn, bound at the wrists, feet dragging through temple dust. There are 4 of them, 3 men and a woman, all from a rival city whose name you've already erased from 3 scrolls this week. They do not cry. They do not speak. Their silence is not the silence of peace, but the kind that settles in bones when fate has been sealed. You are summoned, not to watch, to write. The guard hands you a folded bark paper slip with a single glyph kuchul. They have arrived. You gather your materials, 2 brushes, 3 ink pots, 1 spare cloth, and descend into the lower chamber, the one beneath the temple courtyard. The floor is cold and damp. The air smells of blood and resin, and torches flicker in iron sconces that hiss when you pass. You are not alone. A priest stands beside the captives, his robe smeared with ash and red. Another scribe kneels opposite you, already scratching lines into his scroll. The prisoners are forced to sit on woven mats, each with a guard at their back. Your task is simple: record their words. It sounds clinical, neutral. But it never is. The first man speaks slowly. His name, his city, the name of his father, the date he last saw the sky from home. You write it all down, glyph after glyph. The way he says sunlight makes your chest tighten. The woman refuses to speak. The priest nods. A guard backhands her. You flinch, but do not stop writing. She speaks then, only once. We remember. You write it down. The glyph for memory is beautiful, shaped like a shell, cradling a spark. The second man recites a prayer. Not to your gods, but to his own. The priest interrupts him, spits on the floor, and orders you to skip that part. You pretend not to hear, and write it anyway, smaller in the margin. The last prisoner does not speak at all, just stares. The priest leans in and hisses. He was their scribe. You feel something sink inside your chest. Later, after the questioning, you are told to prepare a second scroll. Not a transcript, a statement. One that justifies their deaths. It must include false confessions of spying, sacrilege, or alliance with supernatural forces. You try to make it vague. You draw the glyphs, softly, uncertainly. The priest reads your draft. He nods. Then he adds one final glyph at the end, a large, bold KX, to be offered. The next day the plaza is filled with song and drums. Incense burns. People cheer. The 4 prisoners are paraded through the square dressed in white faces painted with circles of red. You watch from the shadows, scroll in hand. The scribe, the silent one, meets your eyes for a brief moment. You can't explain it, but it feels like recognition. When the blade falls, you drop your brush. Later, you are instructed to write the commemorative codex of the ritual, the official version. You include the date, the omens, the ceremonial chants. You are told to write that the captives confessed joyfully, that they smiled before the knife, that the gods were pleased. You write it all. Then in your private scroll, you write something different. You write what he didn't say. You describe the expression on his face, not fear, not anger, but defiance. The look of someone who knew his story was being stolen and had no ink left to stop it. You add one final glyph beneath his name, Chaj, still bleeding. Not for gore, for truth. That night you dream of hands reaching for you from a scroll. Not to harm, just to be remembered. Section 14. Candlelight, at the old stone and ink, you have lost track of time. The days are marked only by the lowering of candles and the cold that creeps through the stone floors as night thickens. You no longer remember the last time you wrote by sunlight. Down here in the scriptorium vaults, everything is flicker and shadow. You arrive before sunset, brush and scroll under arm. You leave when the priests come to cleanse the room with smoke and prayers. Your eyes blur from the glow. Your spine aches, your fingers crack from the dry ink. You never stop. It is the way of the scribe. The room itself is narrow, maybe 2 paces wide, 6 long. Walls of smooth limestone, stained with soot from hundreds of candles burned low. Their wax pooled like rivers over ledges and ledgers. A single slit near the ceiling lets in a slice of moonlight, but only when the sky is clear. Your writing mat is always cold. No matter how many nights you sit on it, it never remembers your warmth. You place your ink pots on a worn tray carved with glyphs of patience and memory. You light your candle with a shard of flint and a prayer whispered under breath. The words begin. Sometimes the glyphs come easily, like water down a mountain. But often, they resist. They tangle. You rewrite a single symbol 5-10 times before it settles correctly. The glyph for spirit has too many curves. The glyph for loss feels heavier each time you draw it. On bad nights, the ink clots in the pot, or worse, the tip of your brush splinters. You chew a new one into shaped fingers, slick with resin, and spit. You hold it up to the candlelight. Acceptable? Barely. You keep writing. You pause to warm your hands over the flame. It doesn't help. The stone beneath you has stolen all your heat. You press your knees to your chest, then unfold them again. Your joints pop like branches in a storm. Your shadow on the wall looks older than you feel. There are no clocks, no chimes. Only the burn of the candle tells you when to stop, when the wick gutters and curls and finally sighs itself into darkness. But tonight, something strange happens. As you copy a passage from a royal chronicle, a dull retelling of trade agreements and maize festivals, your brush slips. Just a little. Enough to turn the glyph for gift into something closer to sacrifice. You pause. You stare. The change is small, almost invisible. But the meaning changes completely. You look around. No one is here. No one would know. You dip your brush again, and then you leave it. You let the mistake stay, because somehow it feels more true. The rest of the scroll flows better after that, as if the ink approves. When you finish, you lean back, candle low, scroll rolled tight. You stretch your arms. Your bones crack like temple bells. You don't feel pride. You feel relief. You clean your tools slowly, wiping the ink from your fingers with damp cloth. Your nails are black-stained. They will be for days. You whisper the names of the glyphs you used tonight, like a lullaby. You do this every night, not to remember to forget. Before you leave, you touch the floor, just for a moment, just to remind yourself that beneath all this, beneath the ink, the paper, the stone is earth, still spinning, still waiting. When you blow out the candle, the dark doesn't frighten you anymore. It feels like home. Section 15. The King's Personal Scribe. It happens with little ceremony. One morning a temple boy appears at the scriptorium door, bare feet slapping against the stone, out of breath, eyes wide. He carries no scroll, just a spoken command: you are to report to the palace hall. Immediately. You don't ask why. You just stand, wipe the ink from your fingers, and follow. The palace smells different. Not like wax and cedar, like the scribe chambers, but like perfume roasted cacao, and the sharp tang of limestone polished too often. You are led past murals of jaguar hunts and celestial births, past guards who do not move past corridors too quiet for their size. Finally, you enter a chamber so large it swallows your footsteps, and there he is. The Ajah, the king. He sits on a throne of carved greenstone, his headdress rising like a flame of feathers and jade. His face is painted, but not heavily, just enough to remind everyone he is more than human. Beside him stands an older scribe, trembling slightly. This one can no longer see clearly, the king says. The scribe bows and steps away. You will write now. You do not bow? Not yet. You kneel. The king speaks slowly and with great weight. His words are not orders. They are pronouncements meant to be recorded exactly, without flourish or interpretation. You write. You write as he speaks of alliances of marriages, arranged by stars, of omens observed in the flight of birds. You draw glyphs for victory, for drought, for sun-born lineage. You do not look up. You do not nod. You simply listen and transcribe as still as a lake at dawn. He speaks for 2 hours. When he finishes, he says, "You wrote well." That is all. You are dismissed. But you don't return to the scriptorium. You are taken to a smaller room within the palace, your new chamber. It has a mat, a writing bench, and 2 guards outside who do not speak. A basin of fresh water waits in the corner. The walls are bare. The light is dim. There is no window. You realize this is not an honor. It is confinement. From now on, you will write only what the king speaks. You will record only the events you are told. You will not write for the people. You will not write for the priests. You will write for him. He visits often, sometimes with words, sometimes with silence. He will sit, fingers tapping his jade ring against the edge of your desk, and dictate events that have not yet happened. In 3 days, the moon will rise red. Record it, or write that the enemy begged for peace before they died. You ask carefully, and if they don't? He shrugs, then history will correct them. You keep writing. He grows fond of you, offers you roasted cacao, tells you jokes no one else would dare laugh at. Once he hands you a shell and says, "Write my death into this." You hesitate. He smiles. "I want to see how you imagine it." You write it as a dream. He is pleased, but the pressure grows. You're now responsible for the royal codex, the official narrative of the dynasty. Every word is weighed. Every symbol must last. You check your lines 20 times. Your brush quivers when you draw the glyph for future. One day a noble is executed for theft. You are told to write that he died in battle. When you ask why, the king replies, his family is powerful. They prefer a hero. Another day you're told to remove an entire decade from the record, a time of famine and disease. We will not carry that shame, the king says. Erase it. You obey. But later alone you scratch a few hidden lines into the inner fold of your robe hem, just enough to remember, just enough to defy. The guards never leave their post. You begin dreaming of the scriptorium, of the chill of the ink room, of laughter, of being unseen. Now everyone sees you. But no one knows you. You begin to write with your left hand at night, practicing backwards just in case. You keep a second scroll. You always have. One day, the king asks, "Do you enjoy your work?" You answer, "I live to write, Lord." And that is the truth. But you do not say what you write. Section 16. Forbidden Books of the Ancestors. It begins with an accident. You are searching for a specific codex, the record of reign years, tucked deep inside the palace archive. The air is dry with dust and old ink. Scrolls are stacked in unlabeled clay jars, some cracked, some sealed with forgotten wax. You sort through them by scent and weight, by the texture of bark paper aged into stiffness. Then your hand slips. A jar tips. Not much, just enough to send one scroll tumbling free, bouncing once before landing open at your feet. The glyphs inside are wrong. Not poorly written, not amateur, but different. They curl backward, layer over themselves, twist like vines around bone. Some glyphs repeat too often. Others appear split as if fractured by age or intention. You should look away, but you don't. You pick it up, hands trembling slightly. The scroll smells of lime and iron, as if it had been buried. Or burned. There's no title, no author, just a first line. This was not meant to be remembered. You carry it to the corner and sit cross-legged, unrolling it slowly, careful not to tear the edges. What you read changes everything. It is not a history. It is a warning. It speaks of a time before the cities, before the gods walked among the people, when scribes wrote, not on bark, but on the bones of the dead. When language was alive too, alive, and each glyph carried not just sound or meaning, but intention. It tells of a glyph so dangerous that once drawn it could make people vanish. A glyph used to seal the mouths of kings, to end wars, to rewrite the sky. The scroll says it was used only once and then forbidden. The rest of the scroll describes how to draw it. The ink must be made from a mix of red obsidian powder and the blood of a left-handed child. The brush must be carved from a jaguar femur. The page must be bark paper, soaked in rain collected during an eclipse. You feel sick. You roll the scroll closed, and that's when you notice the seal, a faded mark, on the clay jar from which it fell. A glyph shaped like a coiled snake biting its tail. You've seen it once before, carved into the underside of the temple altar. A mark of no return. You know what you've done. You weren't meant to read this. You should burn it, but you don't. Instead, you copy one line, just one, onto a scrap of bark paper hidden between layers of an unrelated scroll. A merchant, record nothing suspicious. You don't even translate it, just preserve it. Why? Because some part of you wonders if the ancestors feared it this much. Was it because it was evil? Or because it was powerful? That night, you dream in spirals, glyphs chasing each other across the sky, your own hand reaching for your mouth and sealing it shut. The next morning, the high priest visits the archive. You hide the scroll before he enters. He scans the room, breathes deep, his nose wrinkles. It smells like fire, he says. You say nothing. He leaves. You sit for hours staring at the place where the scroll now sleeps, hidden behind merchant records and scrolls no one reads. You cannot unread it, but you can choose not to draw it. For now. And so you keep writing the daily lies and half-truths, the festivals and false prophecies, while one forbidden line waits curled in the dark. Waiting, like all ancestors do. Section 17. When a scribe disappears, his mat was still warm when you found it. Chak Balam, one of the oldest scribes in the palace circle. Not famous, not fast, but precise. The kind of man who could draw 20 glyphs without blinking, who cleaned his brush with moon water and wrapped his fingers in cloth before every session. He spoke little, laughed less, and never missed a night of writing. Until now. You enter the scriptorium, expecting to see him hunched over his usual scroll, a long, dull treatise on fish tribute from river towns. But the scroll is half finished, the ink still wet, the candle burned halfway. His brush lies exactly where he left it, perfectly balanced on the edge of the inkpot. His mat still bears the imprint of his knees. But Chak Balam is gone. At first, no one panics. Perhaps he went to relieve himself, or was summoned to the temple. These things happen. But the hours pass. The next morning, he still hasn't returned. The head scribe says nothing. He just takes Chak's scroll and hands it to you. Finish it, he says. You do. But you don't forget. Later, you search his sleeping quarters. You are not allowed, but you do it anyway. His chamber is neat, as always. A single bowl of dried maize. A scrap of cloth folded with obsessive precision. But in the corner under the mat, you find a hidden scroll. A single page, bark paper folded and refolded until the creases almost split. On it, one strange glyph, not from any record you've ever seen. Not a name, not a word, more like a spiral with teeth. Your breath catches. You've seen something like this before, in the forbidden book. The one you weren't supposed to read. You hide the scroll in your own robe, then leave the room as if nothing has happened. 2 days pass. Still no sign of Chakbalam. Rumors begin. One scribe claims he saw a trail of red footprints outside the southern temple. Another insists Chak was taken by gods for misusing a sacred glyph. A boy says he heard scratching under the floorboards at night, like someone writing with broken fingers. The palace says nothing. A new scribe takes Chak's mat. His name is Pakal, and he's young, eager, too eager. You watch him carefully. One night, weeks later, you're copying a passage on eclipse omens when the wind outside howls unnaturally. A candle flickers violently, and you hear it. A scrape, not a loud one, just a whisper of ink over paper, but you're alone. You check the floor, nothing. Then the wall. There, faintly scratched into the stone, is a glyph. It matches the one Chakbalam left behind. You copy it again, this time carefully. You don't know what it means. You don't know if it's a warning, a message, or a mistake. But you know it wasn't meant to be seen. And you know he's gone. Not dead. Gone. Disappeared. Erased. No funeral. No rites. No mention in the royal records. When someone asks, the answer is always the same. He was never here, but you remember him. And the unfinished scroll, and the odd glyph, and the way silence swelled in the room when his name was spoken. You add his name in secret to your private codex. You give him a title, Ukeyo Uhultsasib, the divine writer, not because he was divine, but because he vanished the way only gods and scribes do, into the margins of history. Section 18. Writing the end of a dynasty. You don't realize it's the end at first. Not even when the temple drums fall silent for a full week. Not when the corn rations are halved, or when the market square grows quieter each morning. Not even when the king stops summoning you for scroll dictation. No, the moment comes one humid evening when you are asked to write a calendar entry. It begins normally today is 12. Can 15K Yank in the third ton of the 10th Baktun. You prepare to continue as you've done 1,000 times before. But then the senior priest pauses over your shoulder and says, without looking at you, "Make it the final entry. You should stop." You wait for him to explain. He doesn't. So you dip your brush again, and beneath the date, you write the glyph for closing a rare one, shaped like a hand folding a mat. You've only used it once before in a mock exercise, but now it's real. The scribes are instructed to record nothing more, not the coming ceremonies, not the names of visiting nobles, not the weather or the eclipses, not even the recent sickness that swept through the palace kitchens, leaving only 2 cooks behind. The order is simple, no more writing. You try to protest carefully. What if future generations? There won't be any, says the priest, and walks away. That night, a scroll appears at your door, sealed in wax. No name, only the glyph for destiny. Inside, one final assignment. Write the end. You are not given instructions, not even a topic. Just one long blank scroll and a single pot of ink blacker than any you've used, thick with what smells like sap and ash. You sit before it for hours. You begin. You don't start with the king. You start with the rain that stopped coming, with the strange migrations of birds who never returned, with the stars that flickered oddly during the last solstice, with the whispers that the gods were no longer listening. Then you write of the people, the weavers who lost their thread, the farmers whose tools cracked in dry soil, the merchants who vanished into the jungle seeking new cities that may never have existed. You write of yourself, too, of nights spent with cold ink, of glyphs that trembled in your brush of truths buried beneath ceremonies. You describe the scriptorium now half empty, the mat that remains unrolled, the silence that once meant discipline, now abandonment. You describe the king not as a god, but as a man who aged too quickly. You do not mention his dreams of immortality, only the moment he looked at the stars and said nothing. You end the scroll with the glyph for closure, then a second glyph beginning, because something must follow. Even ash makes way for soil. You do not sign the scroll. Instead, you leave it in the vault with the others, but not on a shelf. You place it inside a clay jar, seal it with wax, and bury it beneath the temple stair where moss grows between the cracks. No one sees you. Days pass. Then weeks. The palace empties. The chants grow softer. The walls flake. The gods go silent. You are not told to leave, but no one comes for you again. You remain in the scriptorium, writing small things, glyphs of memory, of sky of sleep. You hum to yourself. You eat dried maize and drink bitter water. You burn cedar for no one. One night you light a single candle and take out your private scroll. You add a final line, "We were here." And then you blow out the light. Section 19. The Codex that never burned. You've heard the stories since you were a child. That when the foreigners came pale-skinned, metal-clad fire-speaking, they burned everything. Codices, scrolls, temple murals, even stone carvings where they could. Entire libraries gone in a single breath of smoke. The scribes they found were executed or forced to write in languages that bled differently. The gods were made to kneel. The glyphs were silenced. But one codex survived. Not because it was protected, not because it was hidden in a vault or spirited away by a royal escapee. No, it survived because someone buried it beneath a ceiba tree quietly, with no ritual, no chant, no final prayer. You only learned the story recently, passed in a whisper by an old woman weaving near the edge of the market. She said it was her great-grandfather's uncle's duty to guard it. She didn't know where, but she swore it still lived. You decide to find it, not out of pride, out of need. You can feel the weight of forgetting pressing in from all sides. The temple is crumbling. The scriptorium long since overrun with vines. The scrolls you buried beneath floorboards have gone soft with mildew. You are old now, bones like reeds, eyes like fogged water, but your memory is clear. You walk, past the marketplace, now only stones, past the palace steps where moss curls like forgotten language, into the jungle. You find the Kaaba, not by sight, but by sound, the way the wind hums through its branches low and slow like breath. Its roots rise from the earth like serpent backs. You kneel between them. You dig with your hands. The dirt is soft, damp, smells of life. You reach something solid. Not stone, not clay. Wood. You clear it slowly. A small chest, eaten slightly by termites, but intact. The lid creaks when opened. Inside, bark paper, wrapped in oil-soaked cloth, sealed in wax. Your fingers tremble as you break the seal. The air smells old, familiar. You unroll the first page. The ink is faded, but there. Glyphs upon glyphs, stories upon stories, names no one remembers, days lost to fire and conquest, gods drawn with gentle hands. You do not cry. But something in you loosens. This is not one of your scrolls. It predates you by generations, perhaps centuries. The handwriting is different, looped, more ornate, but the care is the same. You read through the night, a record of a city now lost, a lineage that ends with a blank space, a ritual never performed, a prophecy deferred. You realize this scribe, whoever they were, knew the end was coming, not in fire, in silence. And so they wrote one last codex, not to preserve glory, but to preserve memory. You rewrap the scroll and place it back into the chest. You do not rebury it. Instead, you carry it with you, cradled like a sleeping child, back to what remains of the scriptorium. You sit on your old mat. You open your final scroll, and you begin to copy. Not word for word, not line for line, but heart for heart. Glyph by glyph you carry it forward, into your ink, into your voice, into a new memory that will rest in your hands until your breath gives out. When the copy is finished, you place it beside the original. You do not seal them. You leave them open, because maybe, just maybe, someone else will come one day. Another scribe, another soul, with ink-stained fingers and questions that won't let go. And they will read, and they will know. We did not vanish. We were not erased. One codex never burned, and that was enough. Section 20. The final brushstroke. The scroll is almost full. You can feel it in your fingers, not just the weight of bark paper unrolled across the stone table, but the quiet finality of nearing the end. There's space for only one more line, maybe two. Enough for a final thought. A farewell, a truth. But what do you write when you are the last scribe? There is no temple now, only fragments of walls where moss has written its own language. No priests, no kings. The wind carries more voices than people do. You've outlived everyone who taught you, outwritten everyone who challenged you. You sit alone with your brush, your ink, and your breath. And yet, you hesitate, because the last line matters. You recall the first glyph you ever drew rain, the way your brush trembled, the way your teacher frowned, the way you started over until the line curved just right. You remember your first calendar, your first lie, your first prayer disguised as prophecy. You remember writing blood and burning truth and watching names disappear from history because someone asked you to forget. But this scroll is different. This scroll is yours. It holds everything: your life, your failures, your small rebellions, your buried margins of truth, the forbidden glyphs tucked behind ceremonial chants, the prisoner's final words scribbled beneath trade logs, the God who never existed, but whom you named anyway. It holds your voice. No one told you to write it. No one told you to stop. So here you are. You light one last candle. The flame flickers low, uncertain. You grind the ink by hand, not because you must, but because ritual is comfort. The scent is sharp, earthy, familiar. You breathe it in slowly. You dip your brush. You pause. You write. The final glyph is not end. It is not peace, nor death, nor victory. It is a single, quiet glyph that few remember, shaped like an open eye above a curled hand. It means I witnessed. You lift the brush, let the ink dry. You sit in silence, the kind that lives in the bones of old places. You listen to the stone breathe, the jungle hum, the candle's final hiss. You roll the scroll gently, wrap it in cloth, place it in the clay jar beside your mat, the one you've used for years to hold ink you never shared. You don't seal it, because endings should not be locked. You lie back on your mat, hands behind your head, eyes tracing the curve of the ceiling you once painted with stars when no one was watching. Some have faded, some remain. You smile and whisper one last thing just for yourself. Let the next hand find me. And now, dear friend, our scroll is complete. You've walked the stone corridors by candlelight. You've whispered names long forgotten by time. You've knelt beside kings and prisoners, written words meant never to be read, and watched as truth and fiction blurred into the same silent ink. Perhaps you imagined the cold floor beneath your knees, the smell of resin and blood mixed into sacred ink. Maybe you even felt your heart skip just slightly when a forbidden glyph appeared, or when a scribe vanished without a trace. But now the temple is quiet. The brush is dry. The scroll is rolled. Somewhere out there in the hush between the stars and the trees, the memory of the Maya scribes still lingers, in carvings half buried by jungle, in codices that escape the fire, in the glyphs that no longer speak unless someone listens. And tonight you listened. So thank you truly for coming all this way with me, for resting here in this strange, shadowed world of ink and prophecy. If this story brought you peace or curiosity or sleep, I hope you'll like the video, subscribe, and maybe share it with someone who dreams in history too. Until then, I wish you a quiet night, a soft dream, a morning full of light and gentleness. May the scribes remember your name. May your story never burn. Sleep well, my friend. We'll meet again.